Russian invaders are trying hard to achieve at least some success in Ukraine. At the same time, their losses break all records. Now more than 17,000. This is more than during two Chechen campaigns and the war in Afghanistan. That is why the Russian generals are now trying to collect at least some new cannon fodder. But where will they be recruiting soldiers? And what are they capable of? Let's figure that out together. Before the start of a large-scale war, the Kremlin concentrated about 190,000 soldiers in Crimea and on its northeastern border with Ukraine. Not everyone crossed that border. Russian military forces are killing Ukrainians from Belarus, Crimea, and the Black Sea water area. As much as 120,000 invaders entered Ukraine. Most of them are land occupation troops and units of the National Guard of Russia. But during the months of the war, they have been drained of blood, literally and figuratively. A lot of wounded, captured, and killed.
They have lost at least one half already. This is according to the calculations we made. Of course, these are very significant numbers.
Even by the outdated standards of the Soviet army, these numbers are unacceptably high. And in the modern warfare, it is believed that if the losses exceed even 10%, the unit is no longer combat ready. So the question arises, where will Russia get the new occupiers from? Of course, first of all, they will be searching inside their country.
The total number of the Russian army is almost 900,000. Another 2 million are men aged 18 to 27 who can be mobilized. However, the Russian authorities do not dare to announce open mobilization yet.
First of all, the occupiers will be looking for reserves in the existing ground forces, said the former Minister of Defense of Ukraine, Andriy Zagorodnik. But some of them are already fighting in Ukraine and adding up to the list of losses.
We are basically talking about the core here. It is 300,000, out of which 110 to 120,000 have already been lost, as we see. They are already replenishing the losses they have suffered.
At the same time, Russian military registration and enlistment offices already encouraged the so-called volunteers to become contractors. Credit debtors, alimony payers are being recruited to the invading army in exchange for writing off debts. The total number of such reservists is purely symbolic. A different story is the potential of the Ukrainian territories occupied back in 2014 and the armies of some former Soviet republics. Even on the eve of a full-scale Russian invasion, the so-called leaders of the quasi-republics announced a general mobilization. After that, dozens of soldiers from the so-called Donetsk and Lugansk People's Republics were captured by Ukrainian military.
Born in 1972, place of residence Donetsk, 119th Regiment, 4th Battalion.
Human rights activist Vera Yastrebova says the real hunt for men was organized there. They were detained right on the streets and almost immediately sent to the trenches.
When they realized that they didn't have enough people, they raised this age to 65. So yes, there are thousands of people, thousands of them.
The Russian occupiers can replenish their reserves at the expense of the Belarusian army as well. Up to 10,000 of their troops could potentially strengthen their northern flank.
In fact, they can involve up to 3 personnel brigades.
Another Putin's reserve is the troops of the member states of the CSTO, the Collective Security Treaty Organization. Media reports on possible military aid from Armenia, Kyrgyzstan, and Tajikistan.
None of the post-Soviet dictators agreed to take part in this Putin's venture, so only some African cannibals are left.
Putin is counting much more on the army of his friend, Syrian dictator Bashar al-Assad. Up to $600 a month, according to our intelligence, is exactly what the Russians are offering Syrian mercenaries for participating in the war in Ukraine. Western journalists have counted their possible numbers as well. It may be about 40,000 battle-hardened troops. According to the Center of Defense Strategies, a small number of Assad militants have already arrived, at least in Belarus, but they did not like the reality of a Russian-Ukrainian war.
They do not understand the terrain, They do not understand any language at all, and they do not understand how all the tactics work. It is clear that they will be gone very soon, so their ardor has quickly subsided.
So now Putin can mainly rely on his own, while trying to find new recruits for the occupying army, and also a little bit of mercenaries and recruits from the other countries. According to experts interviewed by the Facts of the Week, the total number of military reserves of the Kremlin may be as follows. Without announcing a general mobilization, Russia is ready to gather no more than 200,000 people. These are the remnants of Putin's ground forces, including all logistics units. Belarus can provide up to 10,000 troops, but Lukashenko does not dare support the invaders yet, plus several thousand of so-called volunteers and mercenaries from the Middle East. So in general, it turns out a little more than there was on the border before the start of the full-scale war. But there are different calculations as well. In this war, the Russian army loses up to 500 soldiers every day. If we add the wounded and the prisoners of war, Putin's reservists will not last more than 2 months, not to mention the lack of motivation, which Russians already have big problems with.